Picture this: a chamber bathed in flickering candlelight, shadows dancing across tapestries embroidered with conquest, devotion, and secrets no one dares speak aloud. The air is heavy with incense, perfumed oil, and something darker, anticipation, laced with fear. Young noblewomen, draped in silk that masks trembling bodies, are led through velvet-draped corridors, their hearts hammering against ribs like caged birds. Outside, masked courtiers murmur prayers and oaths, eyes reflecting desire, malice, and the cold calculation of dynastic ambition. The ritual begins, secret, forbidden, sanctioned by power itself. Each whispered command, each hesitant touch, carries weight far beyond the chamber walls, reverberating through kingdoms. Who survives the night, and who becomes another footnote in history's hidden ledger? The line between devotion and violation blurs as power asserts itself over innocence. Like and subscribe to uncover these ceremonies, where lust, obsession, and cruelty intersect, and where the powerless become both witnesses and victims, their suffering etched in shadows. Across the kingdoms of medieval Europe, power was a pulse coursing through stone walls and silk gowns. Dynasties clung to thrones with fear and desire intertwined, a delicate balance of loyalty, manipulation, and obedience. Noble families arranged marriages not for love, but to preserve bloodlines and influence. Daughters were parcels of strategy, exchanged in shadowed chambers for political gain. Their beauty, youth, and innocence became currency, and their obedience, a requirement enforced through fear and ritual. Women, wives, concubines, wards, were pawns in a dangerous game. Their bodies and loyalty were tools for survival, their identities rewritten to suit dynastic ambition. Rituals of forbidden lust, whispered only behind locked doors, emerged as symbols of allegiance and control. Some were cloaked in religious justification, invoking divine sanction. Others existed purely as instruments of power. Candlelight glinted off polished floors as initiates knelt, trembling, aware that every glance and gesture would be scrutinized. What secrets passed between silk and stone? Which acts of submission would be rewarded, and which punished with exile, mutilation, or erasure? Families wept as daughters were sent into chambers of shadow, unaware of the psychological and physical toll that awaited. Mothers pressed their palms to foreheads, silent prayers hanging in the air. Fathers clenched hands, forcing courage into hollow eyes. The young women, carried on a tide of obedience and fear, were trained in secrecy, how to move, how to speak, how to endure. Rivalries flared immediately, sparks of jealousy and suspicion igniting among the women who shared the same gilded prison. Every whisper, every fleeting glance was loaded with consequence. One misstep could mean disgrace, another could invite death. The palace itself was a gilded cage, rich tapestries and polished floors masked corridors thick with tension. Servants and eunuchs moved silently, enforcers of the unspoken rules that governed intimacy, loyalty, and survival. Observation was constant. The eyes of power fell upon every movement, noting resistance, delight, or fear. Hierarchies dictated obedience. The favored were exalted, lavished with privileges, yet the disfavored faced punishment or erasure. Names could vanish from records, histories rewritten, memories suffocated by the weight of dynastic ambition. Through the eyes of one young noblewoman, the audience glimpses the mechanics of this world. She arrives trembling, her silk gowns brushing against cold stone floors, every heartbeat a drum in the quiet of her chamber. In her hands, she carries the lessons of survival. When to bow, when to smile, when to hide her pain. Her beauty, once celebrated, becomes both a shield and a chain. She watches older women, seasoned by previous years of service and ritual, maneuver through whispered alliances and secret confrontations. The politics of desire are ruthless, invisible to the world. Outside these walls, yet lethal to those trapped inside, rivalries are constant. One concubine, a stranger from a distant court, eyes her with suspicion. Another, favored by the master of ceremonies, offers fragile camaraderie, knowing trust could prove fatal. Every word is a potential scandal. Every touch carries risk. Secret, glances, half smiles, subtle gestures, each could be interpreted as loyalty or betrayal. In this crucible, women learn cunning, resilience, and the art of submission to ritualized desire. They are trained to endure, to adapt, to survive. Rituals themselves are shrouded in shadow. What appears to outsiders as devotion, obedience, or simple luxury is steeped in manipulation, obsession, and hidden cruelty. Initiates are taught the difference between pleasure and peril, compliance and defiance. Every act of enforced intimacy becomes a lesson in survival. Every whispered oath a test of endurance. Some emerge exalted, granted power and proximity to the throne. Others vanish quietly, erased by circumstance, by jealousy, or by the master's whim. In these halls, power and cruelty collide. The young noblewoman, along with all who walk these corridors, must navigate desire as a weapon and as a cage. Her journey, filled with psychological and physical trials, mirrors the lives of countless women whose names history has forgotten. In the palace's velvet shadows, survival is measured not by courage or beauty, but by the ability to endure, to submit when necessary, and to exploit small openings of agency in a world dominated by obsession, secrecy, and control. Behind the grand facades of stone and stained glass, the palace concealed another world. Narrow corridors, hidden chambers, rooms whose doors were locked to the curious, but open to the whims of power. Here, the rituals, unfolded, sacred, profane, and deadly. Candlelight glimmered across velvet drapes, illuminating the polished floor that bore witness to obedience and terror alike. The air smelled of incense, perfumed oils, and something heavier, anticipation threaded with fear. Pregnancies carried stakes heavier than any crown. A child could secure influence for its mother, or doom her to erasure. Noblewomen, draped in silk yet bound by invisible chains, felt each touch as both a demand and a threat. Compliance brought reward and peril, defiance, swift retribution. One young noblewoman, recently initiated into these shadowed rites, pressed, her palms against her chest, trying to slow her racing heart. Every whispered command felt like a blade against her resolve. Outside, masked courtiers observed, recording obedience, noting hesitation. Who would be exalted tonight, and who would vanish into history's shadows? Rituals blended awe with horror. What appeared to the untrained eye as devotion was laced with coercion. Positions, gestures, and silences were scrutinized. One woman, favored by the master of ceremonies, received ornate silks and proximity to the throne, but only at the cost of submitting to acts that twisted body and mind. Another, hesitant, found herself punished subtly at first. A missed courtesy, a cold glance, a whispered accusation. Gradually, the weight of expectation became a noose. The line between devotion and abuse disappeared, replaced by the omnipresent calculus of power. Forbidden trysts and secret alliances ignited scandal. A glance across the chamber, a hand brushed in shadow, a whispered confession. Each became currency. Courtiers, guards, and eunuchs became reluctant accomplices, enforcing the rules dictated by dynastic ambition. A servant might hide a furtive note, another report an indiscretion. Both actions carried consequences for themselves and the women they surveilled. Loyalty was transactional, obedience measured, silence a survival skill. Each act of submission or defiance rippled outward, altering hierarchy, reputation, and fate. In one chamber, a young noblewoman plotted escape through secret passages, tracing cold stone walls with trembling fingers. Her mind raced. If discovered, the penalty could be exile, imprisonment, or death. Each step toward freedom was weighed against the cost of discovery. Elsewhere, another succumbed to psychological torment. Her cries, muffled by thick stone, echoed through halls like ghosts, leaving only silence behind. The palace, with its labyrinthine passages and hidden alcoves, became a theater of manipulation, obsession, and terror. Every corner concealed observation. Every whispered word could become evidence of betrayal. Pregnancy magnified peril. One favored woman, showing signs of conception, found her influence grow alongside her risk. Her status could be cemented by the child she carried, yet every indiscretion, every hesitation, could seal her doom. Rituals surrounding childbirth were both awe-inspiring and cruel. Courtiers whispered omens, midwives and attendants bound to their roles, balanced reverence with fear. Birth was not merely a passage to life, it was an arena of judgment, where survival demanded both endurance and cunning. Rivalries escalated into silent wars. Women whispered alliances, exchanged warnings, or subtly sabotaged one another. Jealousy, fear, and ambition coiled tightly within the gilded chambers. Each gesture, each glance became a strategic move. A courtesan's favor with the master of ceremonies could shift the balance of power in a heartbeat. Yet so could a misstep, an overlooked command, a slight inflection, a hidden smirk. Trust was fragile, loyalty conditional, survival never guaranteed. Young noblewoman's journey through these halls illustrated the crushing weight of enforced obedience. She learned to anticipate desires, to measure every smile, to suppress panic and project composure. Her resilience grew, tempered by terror. Nights were the hardest. Candle flames danced across her chamber walls, shadows mimicking her fear. Whispers, outside doors, promised reward or punishment, and she learned that silence could be both shield and trap. The mind, stretched between compliance and rebellion, teetered on the edge of breaking. Power escalated as rituals intensified. What began as symbolic acts became instruments of control, shaping behavior, reshaping identity, and enforcing hierarchy. The favored few were lavished with privileges, while the disfavored disappeared quietly, or were marked publicly as warnings. Each act of participation carried layers of meaning, obedience, complicity, and survival intertwined. Women learned the art of masking fear, of projecting compliance while nursing rebellion beneath. In these chambers, lust, devotion, and cruelty intertwined so tightly that separating them became impossible. As the weeks and months passed, the psychological toll became undeniable. Some women emerged hardened, their cunning and endurance a testament to survival. Others vanished, replaced, erased, or broken. Secrets proliferated. Hidden passages, coded gestures, whispered warnings. The palace became a map of ambition and despair, each room a node of power and danger. How much could the human mind endure before yielding to despair? Who would survive, and who would be written out of history's ledger? The audience, witnessing these ceremonies, experiences both tension and dread. The young noblewoman's trials reflect a broader truth. Dynastic ambition exacted a toll, measured not in gold or titles, but in fear, manipulation, and broken spirits. Forbidden desire, sanctioned by tradition and power, reshaped bodies, minds, and alliances. The palace became a theater of obedience and terror, where every action carried consequences echoing far beyond the chamber walls. Here, survival demanded cunning, courage, and the willingness to navigate a labyrinth of shadow, intrigue, and enforced intimacy. The palace halls, once alive with whispered commands and clandestine footsteps, now lay silent. Tapestries that had caught the candlelight of ritual nights sagged, faded, and dusty. When rulers passed or dynasties shifted, the women who had danced, obeyed, and endured behind closed doors were left to face fates written in shadows. Some were executed, carefully, quietly, to erase any possibility that their children or alliances might claim a throne. Others were absorbed into obscurity, their names stricken from records, their very existence denied in the annals of power. Artifacts, scarce and fragmentary, hint at lives lived in fear and duty, a torn veil abandoned behind a hidden curtain, a smudged manuscript buried beneath generations of ink and dust, a chamber sealed with no record of the rituals performed within. These remnants speak more than chronicles ever could. Each object carries a memory, a story interrupted, a voice silenced. Even as kings and queens were celebrated in gilded halls and painted murals, the terror and resilience of these women remained invisible. Their suffering was a currency, paid in silence, invisible yet binding. Survivors carried scars deeper than the eye could see. Loyalty intertwined with fear. Survival demanded cunning and restraint. Some women became shadows of themselves, navigating court intrigues with the careful precision of those who had learned that a glance or misstep could determine life or death. Others, haunted by memories of enforced intimacy, betrayal, and ritualized violence, retreated inward, their minds and hearts fortified by necessity, but hollowed by trauma. The palace, once a theatre of ritual and desire, became a psychological labyrinth, echoing with lessons of obedience, secrecy, and survival. In rare instances, some escaped the palace entirely. These women, once pawns of dynastic ambition, carried their memories as defiance. Their stories, transmitted in whispers across villages, concealed within letters, or embedded in private rituals, preserved fragments of what history attempted to erase. They became living testaments to the hidden cost of power, proving that even when history attempts to silence, memory endures. Yet even their survival was complicated. Freedom came at the expense of invisibility, for speaking openly risked the wrath of allies and enemies alike. Dynasties celebrated rulers, erected monuments, and chronicled victories. But behind these, triumphs were invisible lives shaped by terror and manipulation. The concubines, the ritual participants, the women whose bodies and obedience were instruments of dynasty, existed in a realm apart from glory. Their experiences, loss, endurance, and clandestine defiance offer a darker, unrecorded truth. How much of history's splendor is built on the quiet suffering of the powerless? Who records the unrecorded? Artifacts and whispers alone attempt to preserve these lives. A hidden chamber discovered centuries later might reveal the arrangement of silk cushions, the remnants of perfumed oils, a graffiti of names etched in desperation, each a fragment of forbidden ritual. Historians piece together clues, yet many stories remain incomplete. Every artifact is a bridge between erasure and memory, a faint heartbeat of women who once navigated obedience, fear, and desire. They remind us that power exacts a toll measured, not in gold or titles, but in lives constrained and reshaped by circumstance. The legacy etched in silence is also a mirror. It reflects the cost of obsession, the weaponization of desire, and the perils of unchecked authority. The concubines, endurance was an act of rebellion, survival itself a defiance against erasure, yet their invisibility serves as a cautionary tale. The grand narrative of dynasties often conceals the terror beneath. Who preserves the memory of those erased? Which voices will speak for the powerless when history favors the triumphant? Their Ichimei, whispers, hidden in artifacts, legends, and the faint traces of ancient halls, endure as a reminder that survival, and not conquest, was sometimes the greatest victory. History remembers kings and queens, but these women, trapped between obedience and rebellion, lust and coercion, fear and cunning, leave a quieter mark. A torn veil, a hidden chamber, a whispered name. These fragments bear witness to what dynasties tried to hide, and in remembering them, we confront the human cost of power, the lives shaped, broken, and preserved only in silence. Their legacy is not celebrated in grandeur, but etched in shadows, a testament to endurance and a warning for all who value unchecked ambition. Sunlight spills over the crumbling stones of a medieval castle, revealing walls that once witnessed whispered oaths, perfumed oils, and shadowed desire. The echoes of forgotten rituals linger in empty halls, a silent testament to the lives bound by obedience and fear. What was the cost of allegiance, of submission demanded in the name of dynasties? The women who endured these ceremonies, wives, concubines, wards, remind us that history often celebrates rulers while erasing the ruled. Their suffering, hidden from official records, teaches empathy across centuries, urging us to examine modern echoes of power and exploitation. Can we honor the voices silenced by ambition and secrecy? Do monuments of triumph show only glory, or also the invisible agony that built them? Some stories will never reach the scrolls, yet their shadows persist. Behind untouchable walls, whose memory survives, and who will speak for the forgotten? Their resilience endures as a quiet rebellion against erasure.